today's topic is the North Caucasian immigration. We will mainly focus on the immigration life, political immigration life in the 20th century. But before coming directly to the 20th century, we will open a bracket to the initial phases of the North Caucasian immigration in the, let's say, Turkish territory. Indeed, the North Caucasian immigration, indeed, in general, Caucasian immigration and their relation with the Turks started long before, in the 14th century, with the Mamelukes. Even there were Georgian Mamelukes, Circassian Mamelukes, and therefore our common life with the Turks already started in the 14th century. And also, before the end of the Russian Caucasian Wars in 1864 officially, there were per individual or in smaller groups, there were continuous immigration starting from the years 1830s. Because long ago, Turkish palace, the Ottoman palace, had got family ties with the noble Circassians. For example, the Kabardian prince, Prince Haidar, has, let's say, made some sort of political ties with both the Suleiman Magnificent, and he let his sister get married with him. Therefore, the first wife of Suleiman Magnificent was a Kabardian noble princess. The name was Mahidevran, according to the Turkish historical records. And then, also on the other hand, he arranged the marriage of his daughter with the Ivan the Terrible, which is, Marianne. After she was baptized, she got the name Marianne. Her original name in the Circassian was Goshehunai. Therefore, the co-option of the royal dynasties among the Circassians, not only the Circassians, but in general the North Caucasians, has always got very strong ties with the Turks. Also, on the Georgian side, in your history, you have got very strong ties with the Selçuk Empire as well. Therefore, whomever is living in this part of the world has always got very strong ties with the Turks in their history. Therefore, those relations which started long before 1864 caused a huge mass flow of people as the Russians started, let's say, ethnic cleansing and large-scale deportation, exile. With the deportation of 1864, which we presume that about more than 2 million North Caucasians, mainly the Adiks, which in the international literature we call them Circassians, and the Abaza. Abaza is both Apsua and Ashua and Ashharua, which is those Abkhazian tribes, and also the Ubykh. I can say more than 85% of the deported population was consisting of those ethnic belongings. And then about 15% Ossetians and the Eastern Caucasians, like Chechens and Dagestanis. Therefore, thanks to their relation with the Ottoman palace, they had a very, let's say, strong role in the Turkish political life. They had very decisive positions, both in the military, in bureaucracy, and in all sections of the social life in the Ottoman Empire, which we see that also in the Ottoman-Russian War of 1877 and 1878. The core structure of the Ottoman army, both in the Balkan theater of the war and in the Caucasian theater of the war, was consisting of the North Caucasian immigration. Also, just after that, we see political turbulence among the Ottoman Empire. And again there, the most decisive roles of the groups were given to the North Caucasians. It is so strange that the monarchists and Committee of Union and Progress, while they were fighting with each other, all the decisive roles were belonging to the North Caucasians. And when they killed the Grand Vizier, and of course the Grand Vizier was half Georgian and half Chechen. Georgians say that he's Georgian, Chechens are saying that he was Chechen, but anyway, he was Caucasian. He was murdered he was assassinated by the Caucasians. And just after, the other Grand Vizier, Cherkes Nazım Pasha, he was also assassinated by another Caucasian, which is called Yakup Cemil. So when the leaders of CUP talking to each other about those events, and they were saying that they sacrifice one people from one group, one people from the other group. And among them, there was a Circassian who was listening that conversation. What the hell you're talking about, he said. One from you, one from you? No, all from us, he said. So, yeah, I mean, it was the war of the Turks, but Circassians were sacrificed in those wars. Just at the later stages, again, we are witnessing an Turco-Armenian clash in Anatolia. I'm not talking about the 1915 events. I'm talking about 1894 events. And there, again, the main role was given to the Caucasian immigration within the Ottoman Empire. For example, my grand-grandfather, who immigrated from Caucasus to Turkey, Haidar Kumuk, he was killed at Sasun, how to say, Sasun resurrection. So then we come to the revolutionary period in the Russian Empire. You may say, what's the relation of the Caucasian immigration in the Ottoman Empire with the Russian revolutionary movements? Very strange, but the same group which had taken those decisive roles in the Ottoman Revolution has taken very similar roles in the Russian Revolution as well. So even starting from the years early 1900s, the Caucasian immigration in Turkey has got very strong ties with the Caucasian revolutionary groups, not only the North Caucasian revolutionary groups, in general. For example, Kamil Tagridze, a Georgian revolutionary profile who was living in Turkey at that time. He was working with the North Caucasian revolutionary groups together to arrange the revolutionary organizations within Russia. The very striking example of this is the first emigre publication of the Caucasians, which is so-called Muslimanin. This publication was published in Paris in 1910 by a so-called North Caucasian political profile, Muhammad Bek Hacetlaş. Indeed, Muhammad Bek Hacetlaş was not a mountaineer. He was a Georgian Jew who converted to Christianity in Odessa by being baptized in Odessa, and his original name, Gersh Ettinger, was converted to Grigory Ettinger. And he started to work for the Tsar's secret police, and then he was nominated for a secret job in the Ottoman Empire to leak in the North Caucasian community in the Ottoman Empire and to report what they do for the Russian revolutionary movement. And there, our Grigory Ettinger get a new identity with the name Muhammad Bek Hacetlaş, and he came to Turkey. He spent lots of time over here among the North Caucasian immigration. Then he went to France, and there he started to publish the periodical Muslimanin, where he was accepting letters from the Caucasian political profiles like Pshimahakotse, like Haidar Bammate, and many well-known profiles. And he was decoding all revolutionary movements, actions within the Caucasians, and he was reporting that to the Tsar's secret police. Even after a certain scale, he figured out that he started to control the Caucasian revolutionary movement so strongly that he didn't need to publish the magazine anymore in Paris, but he started to publish the magazine directly in St. Petersburg with the name Femir Müslümanstva. And when we look at the editorial board of the magazine Femir Müslümanstva, we see the names Aslan Jeri Datiev, we see the names Alihan Kantemir, we see the name Ahmet Mutushev, we see the name Ibrahim Gaydarov, we see the name Haidar Bamatov, Pshimahakotsev, and whom else? I shouldn't forget. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, Said Gabiev as well. Therefore, starting from 1910, all along those 7 years, in the Caucasian revolutionary movement was fully under control of the Russian Tsar's secret police. However, not only Tsar himself was controlling that, but on the other hand, the Caucasian emigre groups in Turkey was giving a huge support to those Caucasian political profiles who were taking roles in the Russian revolutionary movements. Therefore, we come to the revolutionary period in 1917, when we witness the developments. Indeed, nobody were talking about the independence in those years, because neither the immigration in Turkey nor the natives in the Caucasus had got a perspective for independence. However, I mean, it sounds like very similar to our today's life. Caucasian nations were very much used to serve the sovereign powers. The ones in the immigration to Turkey, the ones in the Caucasus to the Russian Empire. Therefore, the events developed in a way that the North Caucasian political profiles, together with the immigration organizations like Circassian Solidarity Association in Istanbul, started to develop projects for independence. And from here onwards, we see again a very strong cooperation, a collaboration between the North Caucasian political profiles, North Caucasian immigration leaders, and Trans-Caucasian leaders. So, starting from the First World War, again, for example, the name Kamil Tavgridze, the Georgian guy, he was a member of the Caucasian Committee in Istanbul, together with Fuat Pasha and an Abkhazian profile, Aziz Meker. They have attended to the Nationalities Congress, Third Nationalities Congress in Lausanne. Therefore, and also there is another political profile, Babitov, an Azerbaijani guy, was in the same committee. And there, in 1916, we see joint action of all Caucasian nations towards the international bodies to define their life after the collapse of the Russian Empire. However, again, sounds very similar to our today's problems. Georgian politicians, Georgian profiles, they were a bit abused by the German and the Muslim groups like the Circassians and Azerbaijani group were abused by the Ottomans. Therefore, the Caucasian Committee, which was established in 1916, was dissolved even before the Russian Revolution. With the Russian Revolution, the same projects again revived. And, you know, the Transcaucasian Sejm was negotiating with the Ottomans in first Trabzon, then in Istanbul, and then finally in Batumi. There, Haidar Bammate brought the idea of forming a greater Caucasian confederation. But again, similar to the problems in the late 1800s, early 1900s, during the First World War, etc., the same acute problems were repeated. And then Georgians and Armenians couldn't get along well with the Ottoman authorities due to the territorial problems, border problems. And therefore, the Trabzon talks and Batumi talks ended up without success. And as Azerbaijani group were supporting, they were supported by the Ottomans, they left the Transcaucasian Sejm, and Transcaucasian Sejm was dissolved. So the immigration of all Caucasian groups is so effective in the lives of the political life of the natives that in the next coming years, starting from the Soviet invasion until the end of the Cold War years, let's say until the end of the 1970s, we are witnessing a very strong impact of the Caucasian emigre groups in the lives of the natives in the Caucasus. From the point of the North Caucasian emigre groups, I can say there are two leading groups among the North Caucasians. One of them was Haidar Bammate's group, so-called Kavkaz. Indeed, Group Kavkaz was not only a North Caucasian-oriented group. It was a very good mixture of Georgian, Azerbaijani, and also including Armenian groups at some certain extent. And the other group were consisting of the former Mensheviks or Azerbaijani Musavvatists, which found a space for themselves among the Promethean movement.
I should add, it's mainly Musavvatists from Baku.
Yeah,
not from Ganja, because that's different.
Exactly. So when we look at the main difference in those groups, the differences which were defined on the surface is quite different than the difference at the bottom. The real difference is that we're talking about the Mensheviks or Musavvatists who were struggling arm to arm on a brotherly sense with the Bolsheviks during the Russian Revolution. Therefore, these groups has got no single agenda in their life for independence for their country. However, the National Democrats, Georgian National Democrats or Azerbaijani National Democrats, and North Caucasian liberals, they have always independence, freedom as their first agenda in their program.
Yeah, this is, I don't have this published online, but I wrote my second master's thesis about this. And I came to the exact same conclusions as Jen. So I won't go in more detail to interrupt, but he's completely right.
Thank you, Sarah. Even when we talk about the North Caucasian groups, I will give you another striking example. The Denikhinist group, the monarchists, when the Soviets declared their power in the North Caucasus, those monarchists also, they flee and try to find asylum in Turkey. But as they became a member of the emigre groups, they also started to sing the same song, independence and freedom. However, in the North Caucasus, during the war years, interwar years, let's say not interwar, sorry, during the civil war years, they were on the side of the groups who were trying to restore the Tsarist regime. So when we look at the North Caucasian immigration within the Promethean movement, it was consisting of all those monarchists who were chanting the song, God Save the Tsar, when they were in the North Caucasus. And from one night to the next morning, that group turned out to be freedom fighters, independence lover.
But it was the monarchists and the Mensheviks.
Yeah, and on the other hand, those North Caucasian monarchists were collaborating with Georgian Mensheviks and Azerbaijani Musawatists. What a mixture! I mean, really, the Warsaw Group, let's say, Warsaw Group of the emigration, both Georgian, Azerbaijani, and North Caucasian, was a quite interesting mixture. However, when we look at Bammate's side, Group Kavkaz, it was a very consistent group consisting of the Georgian National Democrats like Spiridon Kedia, like Avelashvili, like Shalva Amerejibi, and similar guys. And also on the Azerbaijani side, Halil Hasmemedov or Rustem Beyli, etc., etc. So when we look at those guys, these guys are very consistent, very straightforward, and they are very sincere in their struggle against the communist invasion and their quest for independence and freedom. And also, we're witnessing a very striking dilemma. In the early years of the political immigration, especially Haidar Bammate's group, didn't have necessary funds to make publications. The first edition of the periodical Kavkaz was made in 1924, the issue number 1, and the rest couldn't follow because he didn't have any financial resources. However, the North Caucasian monarchists and Georgian Mensheviks and Azerbaijani Musawatists who get the support of the Polish, let's say, Prometheans, with the financial sources they have, they started their publications immediately. And there, the funny thing happened. As those guys had never have an ideology, has got no political path to follow, no ideals at all. So they should give a hug to a political idea. And they try to steal the political sentiments of Haidar Bammate, federalism.
And these were anti-federalists the whole time. They were anti-federalists. And if I analyzed all their Prometheus journals, not all of them, but I got a lot of them, and I had a set of Kavkaz journals and a set of Prometheus journals, like many issues. They almost don't even talk about this idea in their issues. No substantial articles on this topic. And the ones that they do have were written usually by the people who were really part of the Kavkaz group in a brief moment of collaboration. And if you look at the content of their articles, they're mostly talking about socialism and other things. They really are not developing the idea in any way also.
Balo Bilatti, an Osset origin intellectual, who was one of the leading prominent profiles of the Promethean movement, Caucasian wing of the Promethean movement. He was also acting like the spokesman of the Caucasian wing of the Promethean movement. And in the magazine Severny Kavkaz, he published 2 important articles about the federalism, Caucasian federalism, in the years when they were trying to steal the political ideals of Haidar Bammate and trying to voice these ideals in their own terminology. In those first two articles, Balobilatti is defining Caucasian federalism in a way that that's a must. Without that, Caucasian nations cannot survive or whatsoever. I mean, etc., etc. But the same guy, after Haidar Bammate started to receive financial sources and started to publish the periodical Kavkaz again as of 1934, the same guy in 1936 published another two articles stating that federalism is not the right choice for the Caucasian nations. So from one hand to the other, immediately he switched the sides. Indeed, in Turkey, we translated those four articles. It's a very tiny booklet. Balobilatti selected articles. Anyway, I will put it on the website. If anyone needs to understand it, you may have a look at it. So, I mean, you know, the magazine Severny Kavkaz was a bilingual magazine. It was published in Turkish and in Russian languages. So I will also publish the issues of Severny Kavkaz on my website. So you will check Balobilatti's articles. So it is very clear how they were insincere. Then coming back to Haidar Bammate. Haidar Bammate, when he talks about, speaks about federalism, he was not approaching the Caucasian federalism as a project of laboratory, is an artificial project. For example, those Prometheans were deciding to have a meeting in Warsaw, and in that meeting, for weeks and weeks, they were discussing what should be the official language of the North Caucasus. One was saying that, oh, we must speak Kumuk language. And the other was saying, hey, bullshit, why Kumuk? You must speak Chechen language. And the other was saying, hey, shut up, we must speak Circassian, etc. So those guys, in an environment of a laboratory, artificially, they were trying to decide which language the North Caucasians should speak as a lingua franca. So Haidar Bammate's solutions for federalism of the Caucasus, not only the North Caucasus, indeed, Haidar Bammate was a confederalist for a greater Caucasus. His ideals were so practical, so realist, and so performable. Indeed, in one of his interviews, he was saying that my name is not Amerigo Vespucci or Christoph Columb. I'm not trying to discover America once again. It has been discovered long ago. The best practice of such a federalism is just standing in front of eyes. It is Switzerland. So when you look at the structure of Switzerland, not only from the geographical similarities, mountains and etc., but also it is consisting of three cantonal regions: German, French, and Italian. And the most striking aspect, German canton has got a German nation state just on the top of just few hundred kilometers on the north, and also few hundred kilometers on the east in Austria, another German state structure. But they prefer to stay in Switzerland with their German identity. The French as well. I mean, just a few kilometers from Geneva, you are getting into Annecy, to France, one of the oldest and biggest French national state structures. And the Swiss French, no, they said, we want to be a part of Switzerland. So Haidar Bammate has given us a very good example of nationalistic sentiments, chauvinist rhetorics should not jeopardize the idea of establishing a Caucasian confederation. Because, he said, giving from innumerous numbers of lessons from the history, because, he says, Caucasian nations are surrounded by strong sovereign powers, like the Turks, like the Russians, as is today, dear friends. There are two major Eurasian imperialist ideal in our geography today: Turkish Eurasianism and Russian Eurasianism. So Russians want to govern Eurasia as well as the Turks. So we, the Caucasian nations, are remaining in the buffer land in between them. Therefore, Bammate suggested that, although, you know, Bammate is originally a Kumuk, which is a Turanic nation, a Turkic nation, but his Caucasian identity was far more dominant, and he was saying that if we Caucasians would not unite, then we would be a victim, either for the Turks or for the Russians. Therefore, they said, let's leave our nationalist sentiments, chauvinist rhetorics aside, and try to find ways to establish a life together. Therefore, I really recommend you guys to read at every possible opportunity what Haidar Bammate wrote all along his lifetime. I have been reading him. I have been reading what he had written since more than 30 years. But today, as I said at the very beginning, that I started to study his private archive, as I have been reading his letters, private letters, to the Georgian political individuals, to Azerbaijani political individuals. Apart from his articles in the magazines, his private letters were also telling how he struggled for the unity of the Caucasus within the sense of federalism and confederalism. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think, Sarah? We covered 1 hour already.
So, I mean, that's a really, really great survey of the political emigration and introduction to Haidar Bammate, who is the most admirable person in that period to me. And Cem and I both share a very positive evaluation of Bammate. But Cem has got the chance to go even more deeply, and he will be bringing this out for everybody as soon as possible.
For the time being, I will upload his magazines, the magazines published by Haidar Bammate on the website. And until you cope with the material which has been already uploaded there, I will finish my work for the archive management in Istanbul, and then I will start uploading his private archive to the website as well. Yeah, I mean, his private letters with Vladimir Rahmetli, with Shalva Emre Gibi, with Avelishvili, with Spiridon Kedia, with all those Georgian guys to fight for, to struggle for the unity of the Caucasus. And really, you know, okay, we are historians, we are working on the history, but please do not forget what I recommend you, I mean, sincerely, if you don't mind, please take into the consideration that history is the reflection of our day. So, I mean, and especially the Caucasian history. What we have experienced in our history as the North Caucasians or the North Georgians or Azerbaijani whatsoever, the same things like the history repeats itself, we are experiencing it today. And I mean, you know, a philosopher made the description of being a fool. If you try to achieve something by doing the same mistakes every day, yeah, it means that he said you're a fool. I mean, if we try to achieve the peace, solidarity, and union in the Caucasus by trying to perform the same mistakes, same historical mistakes that our forefathers had done, yeah, I mean, sorry to say that, but as that philosopher says, we will become fools. Yeah, please, Sarah.
Well, and notice that we had not, well, we, I don't know, they handed their future to these pro-Russian groups. All of them were centralists. All of them wanted to stay in Russia somehow. They believed in some new, fresh Russia. The Mensheviks, the Denikinites, they were all in some form or another arguing, well, we just need to get along with Russia and the whole former imperial space somehow. And the people that they were calling chauvinists and nationalists, like it was a dirty word, were the only ones who were able to get along with the other nations. The only ones who were really cooperating really nicely with each other were actually the nationalists. And not in the sense of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Not in this kind of fascistic sense where, well, we'll tolerate each other, but we really, no, they were the true cosmopolitans of the region. Whereas the Mensheviks, for instance, had a much more condescending attitude towards the North Caucasians, which they complained about in 1917 to 1921 period, and again in emigration, it was repeated. So they were sort of interested in top-down unity, centralist type structures and so on, and imposing things and calling nationalists the enemies of peace all the time. And only way we will have peace is through workers' solidarity and so on. And we have to stick with the whole giant new democratic Russia project and work with the good Russians and just trying to demonize. And this Marxist rhetoric is still used today. And nationalist is the dirty word. Well, there are some groups that go to extremes, but a true patriotic person or nationalist person is never going to be, you know, some kind of chauvinist if they are sticking to the tradition of the National Democrats, for example, or the North Caucasian independentists.
And Caucasian people, from the point of view of their genome, they are very much open to manipulations. Therefore, those sovereign powers surrounding us, they know very well our weak points that we're having from our genomes. We are very manipulative. Therefore, I mean, today's so-called problems in the Caucasus. For example, the problems within Dagestan, Kumuks with Avars, or with Lezgis with Laks, or the Chechenian with the Ingush, or Karachay with the Cherkess, and Georgian with Abkhaz, and Georgian with Ossets, and Ossets with Ingush. All those so-called problems are purely manipulations. Therefore, on both sides, every Caucasian nation must focus on one single idea: how we can create a path to produce a lifestyle that we can live together. We succeeded in immigration. I am 75% Circassian, a Kabardian from my father's side. No, sorry, 50% Kabardian from my father's side, 25% Abzakh from my mother's side, which is Western Circassian, and 25% Muslim Georgian. My grandfather from my mother's side is an Algerian. So in my family, I have had the opportunity to live all those cultures together. Therefore, I mean, as historians, we have a huge responsibility. By looking at the history, taking lessons from what history taught us, we must lead the contemporary people, individuals, to the right path. And we should not leave any room for chauvinistic, for extreme nationalist rhetorics and ideologies. Otherwise, all those chauvinist rhetorics on both sides in every nation in the Caucasus will work for the benefits of the powers who tries to manipulate the nations of the Caucasus. Thank you.
Well, you know, I always say it like this: a long time ago, before we had written records, they had a bard. And what was the bard's job? The bard had to sing the story of the legend of our people. Like, who are we? You know, they would go around and they would sing this song, or they would tell these stories, and then that was how people figured out who we are. And they would, who we are, who our enemy is, you know, and so on. So a historian is the same thing. You're telling people who we are, who are we? And there's a lot of irresponsible bards out there. So if you're going to be an historian, you have to really know what story you're telling people and take responsibility for it.
My question is about this deported people out there, whole North Caucasians who deported in 80s, 60s, and 70s. You said that they were actively participated in some political events and so on. And I am interested, as I know, when they migrated and settled in some areas, they were in so harsh conditions, and lots of them even died, and lots of them wanted to get back in the Circassia and in the North Caucasus, but it was not possible anymore. I am interested in how they were incorporated in this Turkish society and in this Ottoman society, and how they, how to say.
I understand what you mean. The immigrants were consisting of two main groups. One group, which was very much incorporated with the Ottoman palace. Therefore, as they immigrated, they immediately found a very comfortable life, and they found very strong positions in bureaucracy, in the army, etc., in the Ottoman social life. However, the second group, the big masses, they didn't have any ties with the Ottoman palace, and they were simple people. And yeah, those people, they were all dragged into the swamp areas, which was not populated at all. And the government wanted them to arrange the territory, the ground, the soil, etc., start agriculture, etc. And Ottoman government wanted to hit two birds with one stone. Therefore, while not funding the immigrants, while not giving any financial aid or equipment to the immigrants, they just expected those immigrants to to make plantations, to turn swamps into the normal agreeable areas, and also they expected them to establish their social life by themselves. No support at all from the government. Indeed, yeah, I must correct one thing. The government has reserved some funds for those immigrants, but they have given the management of those funds to a German family. The famous German feudal family. Oh, yeah. Anyway, when I realize the name, I will tell it to Sarah. So this German family abused those funds and used them for really other purposes. And therefore, yeah, the immigrants had experienced huge difficulties in Turkey. And one another thing, indeed, they didn't have the possibility to establish a decent social life in Turkey, because from 1864 until early 1870s, the biggest part of the immigrants were located in the Balkans, where the Ottomans had got huge problems with the Western Slavic elements, like Bulgarians, like Serbs, like Montenegros. Therefore, the North Caucasian immigrants were the buffer power between the Ottomans and those Western Slavic elements in the Balkans. And indeed, they didn't have the chance to take a rest even a bit. They continued warring over there. And at the end of the war, 1877, 1878, Russians put a clause in the agreement saying that we don't want a single Circassian in the Balkans. And just in 1978, the second deportation started from Balkans by ships again with the mass loads to the western coasts of Anatolia, to Libya, and to Bilad al-Sham, which is Near East, Syria, Israel, and Jordan area. So, and also Cyprus. Therefore, I mean, those immigrants up until the, let's say, early years of the Turkish Republic didn't have time to establish a decent social lives for themselves. 64, the mass deportation. 1877-1878 Ottoman-Russian War. And not only on the Balkans theater, also on the Eastern theater, the big Chechnyan and Dagestani revolt happened. And about 500,000 Chechens and Dagestanis were expelled to Turkish territories and also to Siberia. And in Abkhazia in 1877, about Bejan Horova numbers is as about 35,000 Abkhazians expelled by the Russians to Turkey. And just afterwards, the First World War. Just before First World War, the Armenian revolts in Anatolia. And then Arab revolts in Anatolia. All in those events, the North Caucasian immigration had decisive roles as they were the main fighting power of the Ottoman Empire. And then the First World War and the revolutionary years. And even in the early years of the Republic, Turkish Republic, let's say until 1939, so let's say until the beginning of the Second World War, the North Caucasian identity in Turkey was a questionable identity. Therefore, it was always under surveillance of the governmental bodies, because it was always thought that the North Caucasians may revolt anytime and they may have the power of the country in their hand. Because in the event of the attempted Circassian, in the event of the Anzavur revolt, etc., North Caucasians were the heroes of such political movements in the country.
Can I ask another question?
Please.
When you said that, I didn't know that about this second deportation from the Balkan. And from my point of view, Russian Empire had some reasons why they deported first of all Circassians and overall North Caucasians from the North Caucasia and exactly from the north coast of the Black Sea, because they wanted to control it by all means. And Caucasians was how to say, like some barrier for them, but they in 1877-78 they did not control all the Balkans, and they just claimed some territory like Bessarabia and so on. Why did not they? Why did they want to just deport all the North Caucasians from this Balkan, where they did not control it?
Russia wants to be the ruler of the megalo idea of the Slavic Empire. However, this idea has never been welcomed, especially by the Western Slavic people, neither the Slovaks, neither the Czechians, nor Bulgarians, nor Serbs or Montenegrins. But this ambition of Russia has never ended. So at every possibility, Russia tried to rule the Western Slavic elements. Therefore, at the end of the war of 1877-1878, Russia thought that they succeeded their target. So the Balkans will be a part of the Russian Empire, and they must have full control in that territory in the future. That is why in the Treaty of Adrianople, they added that clause saying that they don't want a single Circassian to remain in that territory. But the clauses of the Treaty of Adrianople was overwritten with the Treaty of Berlin, and that is where Russia has lost its control in the Balkans.
Yeah, I know that, but my question was about why did not ask them just to leave all the Turks, for example, because I know that the Turks were deported from the Balkan after 1912 and 1913, these Balkan wars, and so Turks stayed in the Balkans, but only North Caucasians were deported, as I understand.
Turks are not a warlike nation. I mean, yeah, I mean, in the history, yeah, the Turks are very much warlike nomads. But in the deterioration period of the Ottoman Empire, Turks changed the attitude. They become more settled, and they were becoming more peace lovers. They didn't want trouble in their lives. So especially the Turks living in the Balkans, they were typical farmers living in their towns in peace. So they didn't want any trouble. And you know, as the Ottoman Empire started to lose strength as of the 16th century, those Turkic elements in the Balkans or Eastern Europe, in Hungary or in, let's say, Bessarabia, Romania, etc., they were going very well along with the native people over there. And they were even making marriages with them. Therefore, there was no social or national clash between the Turkic elements and the natives over there. That is why the Ottoman Empire wanted to make use of the North Caucasian elements over there, because they were not relying upon their own national elements over there. They were relying upon the North Caucasian elements as the safeguard of their national interests over there. Not in the national interests, sorry, feudal interests over there, because in Ottoman Empire, we cannot talk about any national aspiration. Therefore, yeah, North Caucasians as a warlike people, let's say non-curable warriors, yeah, they were the biggest threat for the Russian Empire over there. And another problem was on both sides during the war, on the Russian side and on the Ottoman side, Circassians were fighting against Circassians. And it reflected into the telegraph messages of the field commanders. For example, in one experience, the Circassians on the Ottoman side hears conversations on the other trench in Circassian, and they thought that those are the friendly powers. And that as they approach, they were welcomed with fire, strong fire, and they started to swore each other. And in the telegraph, it was all recorded how they swore each other. So Russian and Ottoman is fighting, but the fighting parties on the field were Circassians.
Yeah, it was like something like that also in case of Georgia.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's understood now.
Thank you very much. By the way, I realized the name of the German family, Oppenheim Foundation.
So what are the common interests when they're looking for a common interest? Well, what to your mind, what is like the most dominant ones you have encountered? Like unifying factors in the beginning of the 20th century.
I mean, I didn't get the main idea of the question. You said during the anti-colonial period, which is
Yes,
starting with the 20th century.
Yes,
Are you
yes.
asking what are the common aspects of the Caucasian nations against anti-colonial war, or what?
To specify, I was just thinking like there are different social structures in North Caucasus. Yes, some had like a bit more vertical. Some had more horizontal. You got somewhere like more stronger aristocracy, what can somewhere it was more.
Yeah.
And you have now colonial side like Russians coming, and there could be like the common Russians also have this kind of thing that they are like looking for more land, except for geopolitical thing that this wave is coming to Bosphorus and Dardanelles to Constantinople, to Istanbul by then, and from Russian perspective, Constantinople. Except from that flow, you have also this kind of common people coming and getting the land, like and they have the interest because like in the heartland they have like fewer land and they're coming to get the land, so these common guys who come there have also their interest to get more and more land, and there are like different people who face them, different Caucasians, and like it could be felt like in a different ways, like in a different social structures, I guess. Somewhere it might be like a more social kind of more grassroots resistance, somewhere from more you had more vertical one. I'm just suggesting you could have more like how to say,
Indeed.
So that's what I was just thinking. I couldn't
Question.
formulate well.
That is a very deep question. Indeed, I wish you would be able to read my one of my last books, which was published last year. It was a bit thick one, with about 800 pages. The name of the book is The Caucasian Mountaineers Under the Grip of Superpowers. Now, indeed, anybody who may like to have the PDF copy of it, it is a searchable PDF. Therefore, if you may have time to use the Google Translator or whatsoever, interested in reading it, I can share no problem the PDF copy of it.
Languages?
Sorry?
What language is it?
It's in Turkish. So, I mean, from Turkish to Georgian, Google Translate is not so bad. I mean, I just work the opposite. I'm working on some Georgian archival documents, and translating them into Turkish is not so bad. I don't know what happens vice versa. Anyway, in this book, I'm really analyzing your question very deeply. The anti-colonial wars, which starts in the early 17th century with the great English Revolution, the Glorious Revolution, and followed by the French Revolution, and afterwards followed by the Napoleonic Wars. These are all the wars of financial feudalism against the imperial colonial imperialism. So financial imperialism didn't have any armies. They have the money, they have the financial power, but they didn't have the demographic power, and they didn't have any armies and weapons. Therefore, that is how they conquered first England and started to use England, their international network, and the British Army as their own army, and then organized the French Revolution, a revolution which started with the slogans of égalité, fraternité, and liberté. After 2 months, it turned out to be the most bloodiest revolution that the humanity has ever seen, with Robespierre and etc., those guillotines, etc. And then the Napoleonic Wars, for 15 years, they dragged whole Europe into a bloodshed, just for the sake of transferring the power from feudal imperialism to financial imperialism. And then the central banks were established. In the past, the people were using gold coins, silver coins in their hands. And according to the weight of those coins, that was your buying power. So what you have in your pocket was a direct value. But when the power has gone in the hands of the financial imperialists, it has changed into a paper sheet, valueless paper sheet with a signature on it, which we call banknotes, without any value, just a number on it. Therefore, this led to the so-called colonialist war. The ideas like socialism, the ideas like humanism, the ideals like democracy. However, all those ideals were a very well-packed, gift-packed ideas of the financial imperialism. And North Caucasians, of course, like the other people in the earth, so I mean, as Caucasians, we are not living in another planet. We were under the impact of those global changes, global aspirations, democracy, humanism, liberty, etc., etc. And we took our roles in anti-colonial wars. When you look at the initial stages of the Russo-Caucasian War, which started with Imam Mansur in the late 1700s until 1864, who were the triggering power for the mountaineers to continue war against the Russians? Mountaineers were about 3 million at that time, 3 or 4 million altogether, Eastern and Western. And in front, there was a power more than 100 million with the heavy weapons of the era. Who triggered the appetite of war for the mountaineers? The British. Those English travelers, David Urquhart, John Longsworth, James Stanislaus Bell, Laurent Oliphant, and many others. They were all agents. By the way, already in my website last week, I shared the private letters of David Urquhart, the Urquhart collection. If you click on that, yes, you clearly see that the foreign hands manipulated the war of Caucasians against Russians. Yeah, okay. Russians did not come to the Caucasus because of our beautiful eyes. They were not friendly with us. But we as North Caucasians could be as clever as the Georgians. When the Russian armies, Tsarist armies, passed by the Georgian military road through Daryal to the south, in 1800, in Georgia, you welcomed the Russian Empire. Yeah, that was clever. You have seen a huge power in front of you, which you cannot beat, and then you preferred to be, let's say, not friendly, but at least to protect your, let's say, protect your existence. You get used to live together with the invader, with your invader. No, I mean, I'm not saying this. Let's say it's very much hypocritical, cynical, not an honest attitude. But in our today's world, honesty, heroism, that type of things do not work well, you know. So, I mean, if we're going to fight against a power 100 times, 1,000 times stronger than us, then we must be clever. We must not fight with the weapons. We must fight with our brain, with our mind. We must be genius.
Yeah, and they're always fighting. They'll send like 3 men there and then they lose, and then 5 men there, you know, like completely uncoordinated.
Yeah, exactly. Guerrilla war, guerrilla warfare. But I mean, even guerrilla warfare works up to a certain extent. I mean, and it was such a ridiculous atmosphere that in the war of Crimea, the British, the French, and the Ottoman has just put the Russian Empire onto its knees, but did not give the final smash. And then the Russian Empire, which got rid of the ruins of the Crimean War, immediately started to attack the North Caucasus again. And yeah, I mean, those manipulations really, the value of human life is nothing over there, just the benefits of the powers. So that's why I'm saying that in early 1800, Georgians behaved clever, not like the mountaineers. We mountaineers, I mean, we just worked like the knights of the modern times. I mean, the era of the knights had been over centuries ago. Therefore, yeah, I mean, with the daggers, you cannot fight against the cannons. Therefore, I mean, the anti-colonialist war that the North Caucasian mountaineers raged against Russian Empire was a romantic war. So, and it ended up with the total destruction of a nation, which is a very dramatic end. So, indeed, in my understanding, anti-colonial war was not an anti-colonial war. Anti-colonial war was a war that the financial imperialists used the small nations against the great powers, which happens also today. Therefore, again, reverting back to my final words during the lecture, we, as the members of the small nations, we cannot fight with our arms. We can fight with our brains. We must be clever. And the only way out from this vicious circle is to get united. It has been now about 35 years. Indeed, I have been writing on the history of the Caucasus for about 37 years already, which I found my first article dating back to 1986. But collecting the material is coming from the childhood. So, I mean, since I can say 10 years, 11 years old, I was keeping all pieces of papers related to the history of the Caucasus. So now it turned out to be a huge archive of about 300,000 items now. In terms of the private library, yes, I have the biggest library all around the world related to the history of the Caucasus. But I mean, when I'm saying the history of the Caucasus, specifically the North Caucasus, but of course, somehow it's including the Transcaucasus as well. I think, yeah, that is individually the biggest personal archive in the world. I have started a new website, it's about just 3 weeks right now. It is www.historycaucasus.com. And I have started to upload the whole my inventory there. Therefore, whomever wants to study on the history of the Caucasus, it can be an academic work or just how to say individuals whatsoever. They can be a member to my site, and they can enjoy all the materials without any fee. Primary sources, books, scientific articles, dissertations, photographs, maps, etc., etc. Since 3 weeks, every day, I'm uploading about something like about 100 items. Therefore, it will take some years to complete, to upload the whole inventory. Every artist has got some stages, the learning stage, the intermediate stage, and the master degree. So I have never felt that despite that amount of materials or whatsoever, I have never felt that I have enough knowledge, because we, the North Caucasians, I'm referring to the North Caucasian people, we have studied our history mainly from the Russian sources, from Georgian sources, from Azerbaijani sources, from French sources, from Polish sources, from German sources, from British sources. But unfortunately, we didn't have our own national archive, or our universities never had satisfactory level of materials, neither in the North Caucasus nor in the immigration. And the archive of Haidar Bammate, which we knew that his son, Najmuddin Bammate, donated to the World Islamic Cooperation Organization when his will was declared in 1985. We learned that Bammate's archive was donated to World Islamic Cooperation Organization. However, the son of Haidar Bammate donated his father's archive, private archive, with a limitation of 20 years, let's say, closure. Therefore, we applied to IRSICA, which is the History and Social Sciences Research Division of the Islamic Cooperation Organization. But all our applications were rejected. They said that the donation was done with that precaution, and they cannot open it. Normally, it should have been open in 2010. Since 2010, every year, twice, 3 times, 4 times, I've been forcing my chance. But in the recent years, even when they hear
like
my
4
name,
times a year since 2010.
Yeah. When they start to hear my name, they were hanging up the phone on my face. So this mad guy is calling again, they were saying. Thanks God, it was about 10 months ago, the head of the organization was changed. A new guy was appointed, an academician who's studying on the Islamic sciences. And I tried my chance again, and it worked out this time. He wanted me, before publishing the content of the archive, he said, please define all the archival material, register every item in my software, put the descriptions of it, and then do whatever you want afterwards. So now, and also after making all those administrative work in the archive, they also requested me to I'll say write a booklet what this archive consists of. Therefore, I'm at that phase right now. I'm struggling with 30,000 documents, something like 32,000 sheets. Nearly 70% of them is manuscripts. And I must say that Haidar Bammate is a genius. He was a very clever guy, a very sophisticated guy, but his handwriting is terrible. So every page to decode is really requiring a hell amount of energy. So, but anyway, I started this job at the beginning of March, and hopefully mid-July, I would be covering the whole defining and describing and keying in the paper definitions in the software. And then I think I will need about another 2 months to prepare the booklet for them. And then as of autumn this year, I will be publishing these documents on my website as well. And also I will be preparing a monograph about the life of Haidar Bammate and his ideals on Caucasian federalism.